My name is Laura Marie Schons and I am a professor of corporate social responsibility here at the University of Mannheim. In my research, I'm actually cooperating with private businesses a lot, and we're collecting primary data from consumers and employees on their perceptions of the corporate social responsibility activities of the company. And what we're looking at is whether, for example, consumers feel that these corporate social responsibility activities are authentic, if they are credible, if they feel that the motivation is intrinsic, if there is a positive effect on consumer behavior. That's the topics that we're looking at. And a basic finding of all of my research during the last years has been that CSR activities should not be something that is taking place somewhere in Pakistan and is completely not in contact with the core values and the core business activities of the company. It should start within the company, it should start within the own four walls of the company. I would like to start with a moment from my childhood. I used to go to Switzerland, to the mountains with my parents since I was small, and I remember when I looked at the valley at night, I always thought of these traces of humanity as bacteria in a laboratory. And our human population is growing exponentially while the resources that we live on are limited. In 1972, we heard from the World 3 simulation model issued by the Club of Rome that the planet's limits are going to be finished, exhausted in 100 years. And that was 44 years ago. So, although we see a current trend towards more sustainable consumption and more healthy lifestyles, in a lot of cases, we are not willing to sacrifice convenience for sustainability. For example, in Germany, we see that 320,000 coffee-to-go cups are thrown away per hour. So, if we would all consume as much as the average US citizen, we would actually need 4 planets to cover our consumption. And we see that reports tell us that now we consume nearly twice as many material goods as we did 50 years ago. And still, this increase in material wealth does not really make us happier. Climate change is only one of the big problems that is caused by our consumption or overconsumption. And we are the generation that has to make this transformation to a more sustainable lifestyle. And sustainability thereby means meeting the needs of the present without compromising future generations' ability to meet their needs. But at the same time, it means that we should be able to meet our needs without compromising our fellow human beings' ability to meet their needs. I lived in Indonesia and I saw a lot of examples that this is not really the case. This, for example, is a sulfur mine at Gunung Ijen in East Java, where the workers have a life expectancy on average of 35 years because they are exposed to the toxic gases in the mine and they don't have any protectional gear. So, the fact that we are thinking about possibilities to migrate to other planets shows us the urgency to act. But who should be acting? Who can make a change towards more sustainability? We typically address governments, consumers, and companies. Looking at governments, we see that in a lot of cases, governments are very hesitant to implement more strict regulation because they face international competition. If we look at consumers, we see that 90% of the consumers report in opinion polls that they would be willing to pay more for a sustainable product. But then, if we look at their real behavior at the checkout, we see that the market share for sustainable products lies at around 2%. So, due to these facts, we see that calls have grown louder that companies should be the ones to address. Companies should have an ethical responsibility. And we see that companies are dominant actors on the global stage. They provide jobs. They also pay taxes, at least they should. And also, they, in a lot of cases, have the same economic power as small governments. And we know from Spider-Man that with great power comes great responsibility. But who controls corporations? And to whom are they accountable? And in newer approaches to management, we see corporations as a network of stakeholders, as a nexus of these stakeholder interests. And the stakeholder interests can be very diverse and in many cases also conflicting. And this obviously implies a new role for management, because management has to hear all of these different voices of the stakeholders and make decisions that balance these stakeholder demands in a fair way. We see that companies during the last decades invest more and more money into corporate social responsibility, CSR activities. They spend huge amounts. But we also see that in a lot of cases, consumers are very skeptical and that a lot of these activities are accused of being greenwashing activities. So just increasing the image of the company without really making the company more sustainable or more socially responsible. Krombacher was one of the companies that hopped on the bandwagon and claimed to save 1 square meter of rainforest for every crate of beer sold. And quickly, consumers grew skeptical and they asked, so what are you really doing within your company to be more sustainable? And Krombacher actually lacked a response and they said, okay, we really have to engage in organizational change now to come up with some solutions. Walmart in the US is one of the CSR big spenders. They spend huge amounts of money on good causes every year and donate and donate. But the face that Walmart shows to their own employees is very different. The employees earn such low wages that a lot of them need food stamps to feed their families. And due to this imbalance between external and internal CSR, Walmart has been accused of being Scrooge posing as Mother Theresa. So many companies are tempted to quickly invest into external CSR activities to increase their image while leaving the core of the company unchanged. And this is something that Porter and Kramer have already hinted at in 2 HBR papers in which they state that companies should engage in creating shared value by really changing their value chains. And during the last 5 years of my research, I have collected quantitative data on companies' CSR activities, internal and external to the company, and calculated the balances. And the basic finding of this research is that, yes, CSR should really start within the own 4 walls of the company. It's not about how you spend your profits, it's about how you make them in the first place. Further, I have engaged with a lot of social entrepreneurs who really think about how we can change the way we produce products and how we run our businesses. And I think that this is something that is going to be of increased importance in the future. The issues that we face cross national borders, so I think one more thing that is really important is that we join forces instead of competing with each other. And the last year I have joined a couple of peer learning platforms of companies that really sit down together to try to find joint solutions for sustainability problems. And I think that that is the way to go. So, as a professor of corporate social responsibility, I see my path in really building these bridges between companies and academia, and by inspiring students to reflect on sustainability issues. And I think that a place like the University of Mannheim with its creative minds is the perfect place for change to happen. Thank you very much.